Welcome to Seoultron. I haven't made a video for a while, and it's because I've spent a lot of money on these figures, so I figured I'd just show you what I have been doing since I haven't got any Chinese or Korean robots lately. And these guys are all Titan class figures, and then there's Starscream at their feet, so that's how big a Voyager is. So here's the custom Grandus I'm making. He's probably the closest to being finished. He's about done. I really just have to remove his arms at the shoulders and just spray paint his arms, and then he's pretty much done. And then I have to work his headmaster gimmick a little bit. It's a little bit of a mess, and I'd like it to be easier and less parts forming. But I'll do a full video on this guy when he's finished. He's probably going to be finished in the next month. So Black Zarak here is maybe like half done. I've mostly been putting a lot of work into his dragon mode. So he looks like this, right? And then I gave him these eyes here, which are just energon stars, and I covered up his original little eye painting. I'd definitely like to get some LEDs to light up his eyes, and then those like Shockwave Lab LEDs that make the inside of the mouth purple I think would be pretty cool. So the big couple of mods I did on this guy was I added these posts that are just on ball joints, so they just peg right into these 5mm holes right here. And there's 4 of them, so this basically holds him up for his dragon mode. They're a little bit flimsy though, so it's not the best. But there he goes. He's standing up completely just on these 4 posts, and a little bit of weight is on his tail here too. So what I want to do is I want to make it so that these back posts actually get replaced by his staffs, because they're not really doing anything in this mode. So I need to modify for that. And then I also made it so that the headmaster here can hold the tips of the spears. All I did was drill 5mm holes here, and then give him straws for posts. So now he can hold these like sword weapons, which looks pretty good on him, because he definitely needs some weapons. And just a little side note here, did you know that his staff weapon can actually be recombined into like different weapons? So you can actually just get these little tips and combine them here, and you have like 2 different kind of weapons, which I've never seen that before, but I think that's really a cool feature. So another thing I want to do is I want to reproduce one of these sections of posts so his spear will be longer and more proportioned to his body. So I'm just going to copy one of these sections of spear so that his spear will be longer than his robot body. And then here's another mod I did. So these shoulders can now rotate upwards like this. So that's an extra little piece of articulation I gave him. And if you look at the top here, it's not actually too bad to look at. There's like a little slot right here from the plastic inside I had to cut. So you can see it right there. It's just a little slot, and that gives him the articulation to move his shoulders up, because otherwise his dragon mode looks like this, and it just looks like Scorponok is just raising his arms. Like it's just a torso and then 2 arms being raised up. So I think it looks a lot better when you can actually rotate these forwards. Or you can rotate these up. It looks a little bit more natural compared to that side. This side looks a lot better. Like it looks like the neck is actually coming right out of the torso. And here he is in his scorpion mode, and you can see the posts kind of just fold up alongside the body, so they kind of get out of the way. It always bothered me that the scorpion mode has this giant head just sticking out. It doesn't really look like a scorpion. A scorpion's head is actually kind of buried like into the torso. It doesn't really have an independent head. So this mod lets you rotate these arms up, which kind of covers up the head more. Actually, let me rotate these around. So if you rotate this arm, this way, and then you rotate these this way, so that looks more like a natural scorpion body, because the shoulders really, the head is kind of just buried in between the shoulders in a real scorpion body. So there, that actually looks more natural to me, because now the scorpion head is really buried in here and protected. It's not like a thing that sticks out like a human head. So I think that's a big improvement on this look. So it looks much more natural to me. So here's his base mode. That shoulder articulation mod doesn't really add anything here. It just lets these rotate like to this position, which doesn't really improve the look at all. But I've got these posts here, and I've got all these DNA design articulated legs. So what I want to do is I want to actually get some ball joints and connect these legs to here to give it more of a factory mode. And then these are kind of like all the robot arms for assembling. So this would kind of go here, and then you'd put the other robot leg on the other side. So I think that'll make the base mode look a lot more convincing. And then you put the cannons on the post, and it would look something like this, which I think is a much more intimidating looking base mode. I also like to do like a fan mode base mode like this, where these are kind of like castle towers, and now you have this giant wall, and then you have these opening doors that kind of lead you into the throne room basically. So I like this mode, and then the DNA designs like ankle fillers can be like little windows to shoot out of. But anyway, I gotta do some work on that base mode. Alright, and then here we have him in robot mode, and you can see here's one of the posts that holds him up in dragon mode. And then the other post is like right here on his thigh, which is not very good looking. Like this is a pretty bad spot for it. But if I replace that post with his spear piece in robot mode, that spear piece will just come off anyway, so it won't just be hanging there at his hip, which is not a good look. Okay, and then you can see I'm kind of using that shoulder joint that I made to give him a little bit more shoulder posability, so he can kind of like hold his spear in a convincing way where he's stabbing downward. So it gives him a little bit more posability. I wouldn't say if you're going to do this mod, you shouldn't do it just for that though. And if I reproduce a section of his spear, like his spear will be this long, which is much better in scale with his body. Like that. That's just held together by blue tack, so there it goes. Okay, and the last thing I want to do with this guy is I want to make it so that these arachnid legs basically attach to his hands, and then he's going to have these giant claws, which is pretty ridiculous looking, but they fold up really nicely and look a lot like fists. So this would actually make it so he has like these giant fists, which I think would be a cool claw weapon, and I'm going to paint them red. But I think that'll look really cool, and then I'll add like little thumb pieces. But it'll look like he actually has hands, which makes him look a lot more sinister. Okay, and finally I'm working on this Titan class tidal wave. So I'm going to modify this submarine so we can have it like extends into a handle, and then it has a bunch of studs at the end, so it looks more like a spiked club. But that's going to be his weapon, and that's how he's looking so far. Like, he's turning out really good. He was a lot of work, and you can see he looks a lot different than the Ark, which was the base figure. And he doesn't have heels yet, so he's not so great at standing without falling backwards, but his body is pretty much assembled. A lot of these panels are just held on by blue tack. That's not their final position, but he looks pretty awesome, I have to say. I'm really unhappy with like these ball joints that hold his shoulders up, so I'm probably gonna have to replace those with like a sliding kind of pole system, so that his shoulders will go in all the right positions. And then I want them to peg into his torso so they're not just like flopping here, especially because he's got pretty tight tight ratchets, which make him hard to pose. And then he's got, on his feet, he does have like a rocker joint so he can get some A stances. It's not dramatic, but it gets the job done. But yeah, he's coming out really well. I'm really happy with this so far. You can probably tell how he transforms just by looking at him, because his arms are basically just going to rotate. His hands just fold up into the aircraft carriers. So these are just going to fold up out of the way. And then basically you can already see that's half of an aircraft carrier. And then these are just going to fold up like the original figure. One thing I did have to innovate was that his chest here, well, it's actually on this armature. I haven't glued that yet, so it can just pop off like that. And then these little panels fold up to become like the back of the battleship. And then his head is just going to fold into the chest cavity there to get out of the way. And then this whole section of the destroyer craft is going to rotate around. And that's basically going to become the battleship section. Alright, and there's his vehicle mode. You can see there's definitely some rough spots, but he does transform a lot like the original figure. So that looks pretty awesome. Right, and then here's how he looks with like a core class Megatron and then Shockwave. So there's a lot of play area for you to put little figures on. But yeah, he's going to look really good with like Minicon scale figures. Well, actually, Minicons might actually be in scale with the battleship. It might, or the aircraft carrier might be pretty close. But yeah, really proud of this one. This one's the one I'm most excited about. So yeah, that's where I've been spending all my money lately, and that's why no reviews.